Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome back to the show. My name is indeed Avrum Rosensweig, and I am delighted to be here with you. Thank you so much for joining. I like to remind everybody at the top of my show why I do this. It's really important to have a context for this show and other podcasts that I have done. I am in a constant state of awe of life and the world in which we live. I recall a wonderful movie that I once saw called Joe versus the Volcano. It was with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, and they're floating through the ocean together late at night. And Meg Ryan turns to Tom Hanks, and she says to him, she goes, "You know what? My daddy says that 95% of the world is asleep, but that 5% that's awake, they are in a constant state of awe." And I like to think that there's more than 5% of people whose eyes are wide open, but you know them when you meet them. You know them when you meet them. Why? Because they can look at a stick. They can look at a rock. They can look at a cluster of ants and just stare at them and be fascinated by them, their movement, their collective efforts. What is it about the rocks that sit in front of us? Are they 1,000 years old, 10,000 years old, 100,000 years old? My God, were they here 1,000,000 years ago when the dinosaurs were here? And what is that? What were they? What was the function of them? What are they now? Some people argue that even rocks have souls. I think that everything in our world, part of our existence, is well worth looking at. And sometimes even the bad stuff, the very, very difficult, to understand the dynamics of it, to understand the soul of it. So that's why I do the show, because I want to remind people through inspirational interviews that we are a unit. We all share this planet. And in fact, there is so much beauty around us, which requires us to open our eyes very widely, to look around, to see it, to study it, to research it, and to know it. And if we do that, I think the possibility of peace in our world is much stronger, is much greater than ever. So my show today is, I believe it's going to be a fascinating one because of my guest. His name is Caleb Schraeder. How are you, Caleb?
I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, man. I'm great. I want to tell my listeners and viewers how you and I crossed paths. A couple months ago, I was sitting here thinking, you know what? The Jewish people have to be very, very careful in terms of how we understand the world around us, people within it, those people we call non-Jewish. Is there anti-Semitism? You betcha. It's up dramatically. In Canada, it's up 500-600%. But by the same token, there are an awful lot of friends that we have, an awful lot of non-Jewish people who love the Jewish people, who are enamored, intrigued by them. And I think it's so important for us to develop those relationships. So I sat down, I went on Facebook, and I put out a note, which I do quite often. And that note was, non-Jews. Do you like the Jewish people? Or can you tolerate them? And please be in touch. And I got a number of responses. One of them was from Caleb Schraeder. Caleb, let me give you a little intro, and then I want to dive right in because there's a lot to say here. This is what Caleb wrote me on that day. He said, "My name is Caleb Schraeder. I'm from Kansas City, and I've been studying Judaism for most of the past decade and considering myself a Noachite in the religious sense. I came very, very close to converting Orthodox, actually, and recently made the decision to remain a Noachite for the foreseeable near future. I have young children that were not converting, and had decided to wait for them to be a little older before making the decision to convert. I still attend services and observe many practices, but fully understand my place in the Jewish community as a non-Jew." Very interesting. "My story is somewhat novel in that I came to studying Judaism as a result of caregiving trauma. I'm a critical care registered nurse, and have found deep healing through the study of Torah and the structures Judaism provides. One of the things I've said for a very long time is that finding Judaism, the Jewish people, has restored my faith in God, humanity, and myself. So, welcome to the show, Caleb.
Thank you. Thank you.
I always thought Caleb was a Mennonite name. Is that correct?
Caleb ben Yefuna. He was one of the spies.
Yeah, one of the spies.
Yeah, Caleb and Joshua.
In
Caleb.
the Torah, when Moses sent in
Mhm.
12 spies to
Mhm.
check out Canaan, right?
Yep.
Israel. Two of them
Yeah.
came back and said it rocks, and the other 10,
Yeah.
it's not so great, right? So they were-
Yeah.
Indeed. It's a beautiful name. I love the name. So,
Yeah.
so you have thought about Judaism for many a year now, many years, and you said that one of the things that took you there was trauma that you've seen, trauma that you've gone through. You're a nurse, so
Mhm.
give us the context of that.
Well, I think there's the idea of the gift of rock bottom, that you find the bottom of yourself, and then you become who you were intended to be. After my rock bottom, I started studying the Bible. Of course, I was raised Christian, and was really taking it seriously. I think part of why I had to take that path is working in the hospital, watching people suffer, watching people die. It causes you to lose meaning in life. That you can see this one guy that has taken care of himself, and lived a healthy life, a good life, and he gets this, one illness, and boom, he's gone. And in the next room, you've got a guy that's smoking crack, and you're that you're going to see him again in a month. He's never going to make any changes, and he's got 19 lives, not 9. It loses meaning, and part of that, I think, is just the mechanistic way that medicine is delivered, that we kind of view the body. You, as healthcare givers, you have to detach. So there is a objectification of the person that you're caring for, and you lose sight of that this is a person. And this, I just had this conversation last night. We had a former coworker of mine called me and wanted to get together because a former coworker that we shared had taken his own life.
I'm sorry.
And that puts my count at 8 over the last 20 years. 8 friends that have taken their own lives. So at the bottom, I was really reaching for something to mean something. That's my creative efforts are also part of that, that reaching out for something to mean something. And after rock bottom, I spent about 3 years or so working in a wood shop, listening. At first, it was pastors, and then I was introduced to Messianic Judaism. I started listening to Messianic rabbis, and then I started delving into all different forms of rabbinic teachings. Reform, conservative, Orthodox, anywhere that I could get wisdom to get a better grasp on what this book is, because that, at the end of the day, we we like to think that we're living in an enlightened society, that we've been relieved of and I think in the healthcare community, I think that there's this idea that we're enlightened, and that the religious structures, the religious cosmological view has been disproven, because we have these reductionist means of discerning the world around us. And it's really, I think a false view, in my opinion, and which is, so many, like the person that had taken his life recently this past week. For the last 6 months, he's been attending services like he's never attended before. He like was really reaching out and trying to grab a hold of this religious structure. It's like this is what we turn to in crisis, and so I think I think that I think that speaks to the depth of the religious conversation that is really an undercurrent of that enlightened society, and I grabbed onto it hard and just didn't let go.
For those who are listening and perhaps are feeling badly about themselves, going through a hard time, it's an interesting point, and I don't want to harp on it, but I think based on the context of our discussion in this moment, it's very interesting that when one goes through a deep struggle and they are suicidal in nature, and then they attach themselves to something, maybe it's religion. It's very often when they're coming out of the depth of sadness that they kill themselves. And there's a school of thought that says if they were just able to hang on a little bit more and get past, that bridge into a more positive one, then they may be able to save themselves. Just a thought I want to put out there. Caleb, why wasn't Christ enough for you?
Oof. I mean, I think it's the depth of meaning that I found in when I say the structures of Judaism.
Yeah.
That each week they're like, I get the sense, looking back at my life, that I didn't ever really know where I was supposed to be in this book. It was just so big and there's so much, and that sense was a bit overwhelming for me. Where do I even begin to unpack this thing?
Right.
And so once, and then also, like, I kind of view the characters that make their way through the first couple of books of Torah as archetypal figures that you can model your life around. It's not just this singular point of reference. There's Avrum, there's Yitzchak, Yaakov, and all these characters that are weaving their way through the narrative and providing you with a means to see yourself. And I just fell in love with that. I fell in love with the Torah. I just did.
I want to understand the transition a little bit. Is it correct to say that as a youngster, as a young person, before you got married with kids and you went through this whole transition, that Christ was in your heart?
Sure. I mean,
I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm asking.
I mean, I was raised that way. Yes, absolutely. It was something that I believed very deeply. Yeah.
So what is it like? And I've asked many a Jew who's converted to Judaism, or were about to, because I do some conversion classes,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fascinated by those moments, if you will. I don't mean to be dramatic, but those moments where you're Christian, you have a belief in Jesus Christ, and then all of a sudden this new opportunity opens for you, see something else, and maybe it's Judaism. Over time, do you just let go of Jesus? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of the things that I recognize in my own self in my journey is that I would call it constricted consciousness. My mind was so there in my mind there was objective truth, and that was it, and there was little gray, and I would say that as I learned Torah and my mind opened to seeing seeing things from different perspectives, seeing things from different angles. Because, when you engage with Torah, like, I mean, the idea of Talmudic discourse. One of the things, it's kind of funny. One of the pastors that I had worked with told me that the Talmud is evil. I should never look at it. I should never study it. And I was like, maybe I should look at that.
Yeah.
What is it? And so I started. I've never. I mean, I've read some tractates, but I cannot say that I've studied Talmud. But what I can say is that I've studied Talmud, and what I mean by that is that I've studied what is it? What is the Talmud? Why do people call it evil? And what I found is this beautiful, conversation that's spanning thousands of years, and it's taking one portion of the text of Torah, and it's a dialogue of all the different perspectives, and each perspective has some form of truth that equates to that section of the text. And I mean, if I really carry that thought all the way through, I certainly don't want to offend anybody with my ideas, because they kind of exist only in my mind, and I haven't tried them on with too many people. But the idea that I think I shared this with you in our conversation, that the idea that it's an expansion of thought, an expansion of consciousness, to have this ability to look at this thing from over here and say, oh, this is true, and then flip to the other side and look at it from this angle, oh, that's true, and here, and so it can take you all the way out into this other world of your mind, where you're kind of bending your mind, and it's expanding you, and I think that the thing that holds the mind together when you're expanded like that is, I gotta go daven mincha. I gotta go daven. I got all these structures that are pulling me back down into reality, and so as I studied, I think the idea of Christ as the only way kind of dissipated. That this whoever, like, a big part of my conversation, I walked away from Christianity because I had some really bad experiences in the hospital. I won't share it. I don't need to put my trauma on your audience. I had some really hard experiences, some hard deaths that I don't think anybody should have to go through, but we do. And when I asked my pastor the questions that I had about that experience, or those experiences, his response was so absurd to me that I just couldn't stay. And so as I was kind of making my way to rock bottom, it was, I remember laying in the bed of my truck, staring up at the stars and saying, whoever did that, forget all this stuff that everybody's been telling me about who you are. That's who I'm talking to. And that was, I would say, the beginning of my really authentic search for who God is.
When you were growing up, did you have a notion of the Jewish people?
No.
There was no sense of that?
No. I don't think so. I think they were something that existed in antiquity. That was something that it was a people from the Bible that existed a long time ago. It wasn't something that was present in modern day in my mind.
So you were a Marine. You were brought up in a family. Was there any anti-Semitism around you that you saw?
No. Maybe my grandfather, who actually turns out to be Jewish.
Oh, really?
Patrilineally, yes.
That's funny.
Before my grandmother died, she shared that she was Jewish, and that Grandpa was probably too. And I've had other family members validate that.
Yeah,
So,
many Jews whom I've spoken to, so many of us have these fascinating opportunities, really, that they are. They're door openers where you'll meet somebody. You go to a small city, Peterborough, which is not far from here, or St. Catharines or Kamloops out in BC, and you're sitting in a restaurant, and the Jewishness thing comes up because it always does. I mean, I'm the son of a rabbi, so it always comes up. I make an effort. I actually test people. I really do to see if where they're at with Jews. I do that all the time, appropriately or otherwise.
sure.
And I'll often, and this has happened to many of my friends and colleagues, I'll often say to someone, "Oh, yes, I'm Jewish. Yes, my father was a rabbi, and we go way back as Jews." The fellow would go, "Oh yeah, my mom was Jewish." I go, "Oh," because according to Jewish law, that makes you Jewish, right?
Right, right,
And they
right.
go, "Well, that's
Right.
great. Thanks so much." And then we
Yeah,
just
yeah,
move
yeah,
on,
yeah,
right? So I think there's a lot more Jews out there than we know. But
yeah.
let's move forward in your journey because it's a fascinating one. Um, so you start to study, as you said, the rabbis. You start to try to
Mhm.
understand what does Judaism say about it. And it seems to me, and tell me if I'm accurate here, is that you had questions. Like you were really trying to figure things out. Life, as it does, started to hit you right here in the middle of the
Uh-huh.
forehead. How did you know where to start? How did you know where to go, what to learn?
I don't really. I was just listening. I was working in that wood shop, and I mean, 8 hours a day. I was sanding panels of sheet, you know, plywood, and so it wasn't that it was just the natural progression of exploring. I would say that um, I would say once I had a a decent perspective on what the partial system was, and then I had terms. It's like learning any language. It's once you kind of grab hold of picking up the terms and what does this mean and what does this mean. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm on a search for something to mean something because nothing meant anything anymore. Because I had experienced so much suffering and so much death, divorce, kids not with me anymore, all these really hard things. And a lot of that, a lot of the personal issues that I was dealing with were self-inflicted because I didn't understand what I was carrying in terms of caregiving trauma. So things lost meaning, life lost meaning. And so as I'm, you know, there was an excitement. I remember just being so excited that this book is really opening itself up to me, as I'm exploring it. And so it was a really um, exciting exploration, I would say.
What was it like to not have meaning?
Scary,
Yeah.
scary. Yeah.
Can you go with that a little bit?
Um, well, anytime you feel alone, it's scary. When things don't mean anything anymore, it's scary because you feel alone. One of the one of the one of the things that I've identified in my caregiving trauma and the healing that I've done is that um, a big part of my isolation was surrounding the idea that the things I was experiencing, there wasn't anyone in my family that could relate. I remember telling my family about my day, and their reaction was one of a couple things. Oh, I could never do that. I disagree. I think most people in that situation they're gonna reach out and they're gonna help the person in front of them. That's one thing. Two, I think another thing that is often said is, uh, I don't know how you do that. They brush it off. Or the other option is humor. They think that the stories are funny, and those actually offend me. they offended my spirit, because this person that I'm telling this story about, while all HIPAA compliant, um, that person that person's suffering and their death is being mocked and joked about, and it never. So all of those experiences told me that I can't tell anyone my experiences. And then on the flip side, in the hospital, the culture is that you can't show weakness. If you show any form of weakness, you're you're going to get ate by the sharks. So you can't talk there. And so there are all these factors, these social factors that inhibit you from sharing your life experience. And I think that this also goes to one of the points that I talk a lot about, which is that suffering and death, because of the way that we've organized and siloed medicine in these boxes of the hospital, most people in society are not sharing in the suffering and the experience of suffering and death. 120 years ago, everyone shared in it. Your grandma or grandpa gets sick, and they're on the kitchen table, or they're on the couch or on the bed, and you're caring for them at home. And everyone had their story of helping a family member. And today that just isn't the case. All of the weight of suffering and death is siloed on the healthcare worker, which is a point that I think most people don't factor into their caregiving trauma.
It's a very interesting environment. I've had 3 heart
Wow.
attacks, and so I've been in ICU at least 3 times. And I remember the last time I was lying in emergency, and I was suffering and I was scared. When you have a heart attack, generally you're not sure if you're going to survive or not. And I have a son, I have a family, I have a village. And I remember hearing the nurses laughing and joking outside the room. And I pressed my button and I called in one of the nurses. I said, I wonder if you could please stop joking around, at least so I can't hear it. Because honestly, I feel like very sick and like I could be dying. And I just can't listen to you do that. Right. And I don't blame them. I don't blame the nurses for doing that, because I understand you're in a most difficult environment. I mean, you walk through the front doors of your hospital every day, and it's not like you're going to make widgets, right? You may lose 2, 3, 4 patients in the course of a day, right?
Sure.
So let's sort of pick up on the journey that you're on. So you felt this tremendous sense of loneliness, lack of meaning, and I understand that. I've been there myself. But yet it's interesting, Caleb, because you had the wherewithal to try to fix that, to hold on to something, or to try to find perhaps some literature or some spirituality that would bring you back, if you will. That takes a lot of strength to do that. Am I correct?
Yeah, it was a choice. I would say, I mean, I came very close to dying, and I would say I had a choice. I remember my choice. I remember my choice. I don't know if it's entirely wise to share publicly, but it's just what it is. I remember thinking, because I'm a nurse, because I've had these unique experiences as a nurse, and took care of homeless people for a time. I do understand how to navigate the system of homelessness. And I had about a year after rock bottom, for that first year, I was wrestling with, do I even want to be part of society? Do I even want to be here? I don't necessarily, I'm not, I don't think I had the full courage to take my own life, which I guess I'm thankful for. But the idea of living under a bridge was tempting. it was, I remember making the wood shop that I worked in. It was the 12th Street Bridge in downtown Kansas City. And every day at lunch, I would sit under that bridge. I would read my Bible and I would eat my lunch and I would look up the hill and there was Tent City with all these homeless folk. And, and so it was kind of tempting me. It was up there, like, it's right there. You can just drop out of society and quit. And I remember the decision was my kids will have to live with the shame of their father quitting, and what will they tell? What would they say about me? I didn't want my kids to feel that shame. I also didn't want my kids to feel that shame if I killed myself. That was one of the things that kept me from doing it. So yes, it did take courage, because where do you start when you've hit such a low? Where do you even start to pick back up? And part of my decision was because they put me on a whole bunch of meds, and I dumped them. I said, God, if you want me here, if you have a greater purpose for my life, it's gonna have to be natural. I can't be taking all these medications, and not that the medications can't help. I'm not telling anyone to not take their medications. For me, it was I felt like almost out of body on medications, and that was another part of how I got to such a low, was that I was prescribed Adderall, a huge dose of Adderall, because they thought it was ADHD. It was really just trauma. It was my nervous system was fried from all of the stress and weight of the burden of caregiving that I was carrying. So Adderall was quite literally the exact opposite thing of what was needed, which was nervous system regulation. And Adderall just basically puts your nervous system on lightning speed. So,
were you in the field as a Marine?
No, never.
Okay. Just listen. I work with the homeless for 20 years. I started a Jewish humanitarian organization. We may have talked about this. Part of our agenda was to work out in the streets with the homeless, and we send a nightly van with volunteers to go downtown, give out food, give out drinks. The organization's called Via Hafta. Great organization. I've retired from it, but we do great stuff. You can find it at viahafta.org. And I started to understand the homeless over time, and I would say succinctly that their lives are extraordinarily lonely, right? And most of them are void meaning, other than just getting through the day. What was it that attracted you to that homeless lifestyle potentially?
I think it was, one, I had been given an example, just like suicide. One of the greatest predictors of suicide is having someone in your life that has done it. And every critical care nurse has experienced suicide at the bedside routinely. On Julie and my podcast, we dedicated a whole episode to suicide season, because between Thanksgiving and New Year's, every year it's suicides spike. And so we've seen every possible way that you can do it. We know how to do it. I would say the same thing is true with the homeless. One of the things that I thought about in that time was that there was this lawyer that I took care of in the homeless clinic that I worked in, and he was brilliant. He was so smart. He was articulate, and I remember sitting there with him thinking, how do you get to this place? How the hell do you get to this place? And he said, society's a mirage. It's not real. It's all bullshit. And I just don't want to be a part of it. And so I do this. And so having that example and having that conversation with him, I think is what was uh, I had been given the example.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that happens, isn't it, Caleb? That you have that conversations that's somewhere in the back of your consciousness anyway, and it brings that stuff out. I've been there
Hmm.
myself. I totally understand that experience. You walk away from it thinking, okay, good, I have it. Now I understand how I feel. But shit, I wish I wouldn't
Yeah,
have heard it.
yeah,
Right? It's kind of a little bit of
yeah.
both. So as you started to move towards studying Judaism, what was your perspective on in the beginning? What was your perspective on the Jewish people? What were we like to you?
I really don't think I had a perspective on the Jewish people. I I really wasn't. One of the things that I was told routinely as a child. I remember this very succinctly. I remember my dad telling me this over and over and over. He said this so many times that every group of people, every race, every religion, every group of people has about 10% that are just not good people, and the rest of them are probably pretty good people. And so that's really how I've approached people in my life. I integrated that to myself. I think that so that I would say I didn't have any other thought formulated beyond that. And that's just and that's not like that's not something that, you know, it's just kind of back there. It's not like I wasn't projecting that onto my experience at the time of encountering the Jewish people. Um, I would say my thoughts and experiences were formulated by the personal experiences that I have had.
Right. So let's
Yeah.
go there then. Let's talk about your experiences because as a Jew, it's impossible for me to see our people clearly,
Mm.
right? And I often say I tell my conversion classes, I say, you know what? I wish that I could convert to
Ah.
Judaism. Right. So that I could have such a clear understanding of well, who those people are, those people being Jewish, and then becoming a Jew and seeing what that's like. So, yes, what were your experiences like, let's say early on with the Jewish people?
I mean, my experience has largely been very positive. I mean, um, in the Messianic place that I was attending for a while, all of the Jewish people there were very generous and very kind to me, extremely. And I had really there was one person that was a little gruff, but nothing,
Then ask.
that's just people.
Yeah.
Um, I as I moved more towards orthodoxy, I encountered more resistance. I've been told some things that were not so kind, coming from the outside in, but they never the the positives so far outweighed the negative experiences that it it just never has been really an issue for me. I would say all of my best friends today are all Jewish. The all the best relationships, probably the best relationships I've ever had in my life, are with Jewish people. They're my best friends.
Well, what do you bring that down to?
Well, I would say my study is sincere, and so we have a contextual basis for our relationship that is really rooted in study, and that it grows from that. Um, because I would say most of my best friends are people that I study with, that I learn with. Yeah.
What were, for the sake of the Jewish people knowing this and what not to say to somebody who's researching Judaism, what were some of the bad things that they said to you?
Um, like implying that I would never fit in.
Yeah.
And there is like there is a profound sense of understanding that you know, a lot of people in my community say, well, you should just go to rabbinic school. You know more than all of us. you know, you.
You do know a lot. Man. You know a
Well, thank
lot.
you.
Yeah.
I've been really dedicated to learning, and I just love it. So, but they say that, and on the other hand, on the other side of that, in my mind, I'm like, yes, and I do say this. I say this all the time. There are things I can know 100 times more Torah than you because I wasn't raised in it. There are experiences and things that you just know that I will never know, and so there is this sense of uh, separation that isn't like it isn't like I'm not part of the community. It's just a knowing that you have experiences that I'll just never fully understand.
What might that be? Give us an example.
Um, well, I mean, like during holiday seasons, like the song that's the basis of the cabinet that I made, Echad Miadea. I didn't really understand the context of that song as being a children's song when I first came to it.
Hmm.
So it's like, had I been raised in it, of course I would have known that. Of
I see.
course,
I get you. Right.
and so many things like that. I still experience that. I still experience during Hagim I experience things during Hagim um, that are just eye-opening, that are surprising and fascinating, that add another layer of context. Um,
Caleb, you studied extensively Torah. You have a deep love and you're passionate about it, and I relate to that because so am I. I love the study of Torah. You've ensconced yourself somewhat in the Jewish community. You've gotten to know many Jews. Your best friends are Jewish, as you say, and you have a very positive outlook on the Jewish people, which makes me very happy and excited. But your perspective is a unique one because you're not Jewish. You call yourself a Noachite Jew, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So, through your perspective, perhaps you can tell us why are the Jewish people hated so much?
oof, I don't understand it. Um, I really don't get it. Um, I think I think I think I would say part of it is kind of that idea that the constricted mind space. If you can't, uh, if you know, when I think living on an individual basis and judging people individually is really important to do. Lumping a whole group of people into a category of hate is ignorant. Um, as to I really don't understand it. It's such a maybe it's like Kanye said. Kanye said, I hate I hate them because of the way they do business together, the way their family has dinner every night on Friday night together, and the fathers are all in the homes. Like it's the jealousy of the purity that exists within the religious home, perhaps.
Have you? That is definitely a school of thought. I've asked many people why we are so hated, and that is a very strong school of thought. Have you experienced in your own way, or been privy to, heard perhaps a conversation which was
Oh,
anti-Semitic and responded to it?
yes. I mean, I've personally experienced it. in my own life online. Been been called. I mean, can I just say it?
Yeah, you can swear
Yeah,
to your heart's content.
I've been called a kike online. You know, so I've experienced it personally. I most of my when October 7th happened, most of my coworkers, they were very upset and needed to understand, and they came to me and asked um, meaningful and probing questions, and I was able to educate. And I think that most of them uh, came to see my perspective and appreciate it. So my daily life, I don't experience too much, but I've also taken on the role of educator in those individual personal relationships. So and then yeah, I've had very close people to me say some of the worst things that you could possibly imagine about the Jewish people, and even family that has said some very hurtful things to me.
How do you respond?
Um, Depends on each situation. Uh, with one, I just I just say you don't know what you're talking about. You haven't
Mhm.
studied. You haven't learned. Like you're listening. You know, this kind of I think that conspiratorial thinking is a byproduct of a lack of meaning societally. That
Yeah.
they're reaching for something to blame for the lack of meaning, which I am doing a lot of writing around this idea of trying to understand. I'm specifically trying to understand suicide, and using my own personal journey as a guide for that writing. But I'm also looking at how Enlightenment thinking is driving a lot of this siloed thinking, constricted mind space stuff, and so the people that I feel um, the people that I feel like may be able to hear me, I will engage in a meaningful dialogue. But the people that can't hear me, it's almost like, you know what, you just go on and believe what you're going to believe, and I'm just going to let you take that as far as you want to take it, because it's only going to take you down. Not uh, meaning that when you I think that I think it's a maybe a Torah thought, that really the world around you is reflecting what's inside, and so when there is that deep hate in the heart, it is just a reflection of what's happening internally.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
fascinating. I can't wait to
yeah.
read your stuff. You made a decision a little while ago that you weren't going to convert, and the decision that you made, in short, was predicated on some familial things going on, which I thought were highly sensitive. And you wrote a letter to your rabbi stating why that
Mhm.
was. Your children are young; they're not all interested in
Uh,
converting, if any of them. And you decided, therefore, it was important that you hold on to the relationships the way they were within the context of your living at that time, and not convert to
mhm,
Judaism. And I thought that was very extraordinarily well thought out. Um, we would consider you, the Jewish people, a Noachite.
mhm.
And a Noachite is, in simple terms, is what a non-Jew can be vis-a-vis God and the mitzvot, the commandments, but not the 613 mitzvot. There's only 7 of them. So there are many Noachite people around the world, and they follow the Noachite laws. And I just want to go through what they are very, very quickly. One is a prohibition of idolatry, prohibition of murder, prohibition of theft, the prohibition of sexual immorality, prohibition of blasphemy, in particular towards God. Here's a very interesting one: prohibition of eating flesh from a living animal, and establishment of courts of justice. Are the Noahide laws something that you now study?
Not specifically. I mean, I still study with my rabbi, and my core group of friends. We still, but we don't. I'm not actively involved in breaking down those specifically. No.
These friends whom you study with the rabbi, is he Orthodox?
Hmm.
Are they Orthodox?
Yes,
And they're accepting of you despite the fact that you're currently not on the road to conversion.
absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, do you feel in your heart, do you sense in your heart that you have a Jewish soul?
I think probably. Yeah, the Bissel Yid, yeah, that's what my rabbi always says.
Oh, you're speaking Yiddish over there, are you?
Yeah. I mean,
Wow,
no, I
Kansas
can't speak
City.
Yiddish. I cannot. I cannot.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah,
So you do sense you have a Jewish soul.
yeah. And I think, I think the path that I'm choosing right now is, you know, when I asked my rabbi what my role is in this world, he said it's no different than mine. He says prepare the world and the world around you for the world to come. That's simple.
Right.
So
Right. He sounds like a great rabbi. Is he a Lubavitch
yes,
rabbi?
yes, and they're
Yeah.
fantastic. They are like truly. Yeah, I would say when I say the finding the Jewish people, I would say that is who I think of as my rabbis. They're just the best
Uh,
people.
I mean, what I'm impressed by, and I'm assuming you're pretty impressed by this too, is one would think that you come along, Caleb Schraeder comes along and says, "Okay, I'm not converting, at least not right now." One
No,
might think that the rabbis would stop learning with you, but that's not the
no,
case.
mm-mm,
Very interesting.
no,
So
no.
so there's different components to you, um, and you're a guy who really reflects a lot of meaning and purpose in life, and that's important to my interview because I really want people to take out of these interviews the potential within our very short time here on Earth. And it seems to me that you are maximizing that. One of the areas that you're deeply, deeply passionate about is woodwork. And in a video that you produced, that you created, and I want to show it, at least some of it here for a moment. You said, I don't really see myself as an artist. I more so see myself as a philosopher, and that's in the context of woodworking. Can you explain that?
Um, I think I think that being a healthcare worker in modern day lends itself to philosophical thinking. And I think that philosophical thinking is, I think it's also, I would say that it's part of the search for meaning. That what does this mean? That's, Viktor Frankl's Man in Search of Meaning. When I read that book, I've got my own notes in my copy of that book as an ICU nurse, not to equate the experiences of the Holocaust with that of an ICU, but there is the overlap of watching the psychology of someone who's suffering and ultimately dying. There is an overlap. I mean, it is a part of the human experience. And when you experience that, uh, I think that it makes you think about life in a different way than you would. I can have conversations with with my coworkers that I can't have with anybody else, and they're oftentimes philosophical. What does, you know, um, ideas about how we want to die? We talk about that. I don't want to go this way. I want to go that way. Those kinds of conversations. So woodworking and philosophy to me, you know, they just kind of go hand in hand. That you know, you're working, and also I would say that being a critical care nurse and being a woodworker are in a lot of ways the same job. You're trying to prevent one from passing, and you're trying to give life to another. You know, you're bringing this tree that's dead and gone. You're giving it a second chance, a second life, and that tree, because it's a living thing and has a soul, it is communicating with you through the grain, the patterns in the grain, the flow of the grain. And yeah, I think I think woodworking, because there's this beautiful dance that happens in crafting and creating, where you essentially, you're going from disorder to order, from chaos to order, and you're taking this piece of wood, and it's all rough and mangled and twisted, and you're refining it and shaping it and putting it into this form that you have vision for. And I just think that, you know, all of the processes that you go through to achieve that end goal of that vision, that whole process demands philosophical thought.
Is that sort of similar to the example that I gave before about the movie with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, that you're in a constant state of awe? So when you look at a piece of wood, it's not something that's, you know, fallen by the wayside and is cracked and it's got holes and it's got mites running through it. You look at it as a soulful piece.
Yeah. What's this thing trying to say to me?
What's it trying to say to you? So I want to show this video that you've created, and to give people a sense of more so your understanding of woodworking. So let's watch that for a moment.
My name is Caleb Schraeder. I'm an artisan furniture maker. Wood, each tree is a life. It had a life, and it should be respected. You know, on some of my projects, I count every growth ring, every grain line, mark them out to maximize the beauty and match the grains, just to extend that tree's life in the best way possible. I've always resisted the label of artist and prefer the label of philosopher. My process is driven by philosophy. What I believe actually dictates the process and the end product. So I was researching, and I wanted to know how they did it 200 years ago, how to make something that's going to last. And just like I wanted to know how to do things the way they did it in the 1800s, I wanted to know how they made structures that were timeless. You know, what's the point of learning how to do something that, you know, the traditional way that is going to last if it's not going to be timeless in its beauty as well? I've had people stop dead in their tracks when they walk into the room. They're speechless, literally. After a few months of having the project, they always come back and say, it's become a living part of my home. I can't pass it without touching it. It's actually an emotional thing for me because so much of who I am goes into each project, and I give so much of my soul into each piece. But as I said, it's an intimate process. It's intimate for the maker, and it's intimate for the client.
It was good. That was really good.
Thank you.
Caleb Schraeder, I find you to be a fascinating person. I, quite frankly, to be quite biased, I'm really happy that You're a part of the Jewish people, and I say that with an open heart. So often when I sit in the conversion classes, I tell the non-Jews who have people who are not converted yet, I say, I'll be quite honest. From my perspective, you are a Jew. That's how I feel. Would you say that today you're happier?
I found joy. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very happy.
And tell us about your joy, man. I want to hear about it.
Well, I think prayer is a place that I go that centers me and grounds me and gives me, gratitude is. I think part of the constricted mind space is a lack of gratitude and not being able to see the good things around you. I've read some of Rabbi Ashlog's Kabbalistic texts, and one of the meditations that I like to practice is just going outside and looking around and taking account of the regenerative nature of our reality and just how beautiful it is. I would say having all of those practices, having all of the balance points, I feel like I'm prepared to confront the obstacles of life in a way that I never was before. And that makes for a happy person.
There's a very important line in the Torah, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." One should love their brother and sister as they love themselves, which the idea behind that is you need to love yourself first. Do you love yourself?
I do.
How does that look? How does that feel?
How does it look practically speaking?
A lot of people don't understand the concept, including myself, quite frankly. I try very hard to love myself. I'm not quite there yet. What does it mean to love yourself?
There's an interesting thing. This guy that I used to work with, he was really gruff. He was really just sometimes downright mean. But he would always say to me, be kind to yourself. And I never understood what that meant. And I would ask him, and he said, I can't tell you. And he let me sit in the uncomfortable place with that saying for, he never unhooked it for me. And I remember, it was probably 2 or 3 years along this journey of after rock bottom, and I had to mow the yard, and I really didn't want to, but I knew that it was gonna. I knew that it was gonna be. I knew it had just rained, and I knew that it was going to be hot, and in another day, it would be just a dust storm if I mowed then. And I was like, I'm going to be kind to Caleb tomorrow, and I'm going to do it today. And so, kind of looking beyond the moment at how my choices impact my future life, my future self. That's one form of care and love for myself.
What's the greatest thing you've ever done?
Ooh. I think this climb out of the pit is probably the greatest thing that I've done. Climbing up from the bottom.
You're proud of yourself?
I'm very proud of myself, yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
Are you a good dad?
Yes and no. I'm still making my corrections there, which is part of my decision. I think that one of the ideas in that I picked up from Judaism is the idea that in one pocket you should have a paper that says I'm nothing. So when you're at the top of the life, top of the world, you pull that paper and say I'm nothing but dust, and then in the other pocket you say the whole world was created for me. And so when you're at the bottom, or you can look out and see. And so these ideas are balancing points And I view myself. I always, when anybody says anything about that I think is over the top, I say I'm a mixed bag. I'm I have really great qualities as a father. I think my kids all know that I love them. I think there's not any question. I think that is a metric of being a good parent. They if I passed right now, God forbid, I think each one of my kids would absolutely know without any question that I love them, and that gives me the sense that I'm a good dad. Um, and um, and then I'm not a great dad either. I'm a mixed bag. Fatherhood is, I mean, one of the ideas, like, you know, you necessarily, parenting is a job that requires failure. If you were a perfect parent, that child would never want to leave you. So, so you have to fail in order to make a healthy human being. You fail as a parent, and so
Thank God.
yeah,
Thank you for letting me off the hook, Caleb. I appreciate it.
right, yeah,
It's an interesting
yeah,
point. Caleb,
yeah.
there are a lot of Jewish people who watch my podcast. It's not exclusively Jewish, but skews Jewish if you haven't
Sure.
seen already. I know that you love the Parsha and Prose that I do with Rabbi Gomorrah on a weekly
Mm,
basis. You wrote me a beautiful note, and I have to tell you something. I was so grateful for that, and I shared it with Rabbi Gomorrah, and he was equally as thankful. It means a lot to us, a lot to us.
absolutely.
If somebody was interested in studying Torah, a Jew or a non-Jew, is there a particular sefer? Is there a particular book that you would direct them toward?
Um, I mean, start at the basics. Start at the partiot. Just jump in. Jump in at uh, the weekly parsha, and just start learning. That's what I would say. I thought that last week's podcast on Vayikra was well said. That you lose once we enter into Vayikra, that a lot of people are lost and they stop paying attention. It can be difficult, but I thought that was a well said, and contextualizing it around the idea of relationship was beautiful. But yeah, I think just jumping in and starting to learn the weekly Torah portion. I think if somebody doesn't know, I mean, I really think that's the secret to the book is the structure that it provides for you. You know, when things don't mean anything, the world has. I mean, it's kind of like the idea of tohu vavohu is it's just an expansive chaos, and that's kind of how the book feels to me in retrospect. What I was describing in my Christian experience, that I just didn't know where I belonged or where do I go in this thing. There was no structure to it, and learning the Parshiot system and just jumping in and starting there will start to define the path.
Abraham or Moses?
Ooh. Like so. What's the actual question here?
No, more often than not, when we study the biblical characters, we
Uh-huh.
have a relationship with them, and obviously, from my mind, I think you'd agree that it comes from within inside of us. Moses was a man of peace, right?
Hmm.
I'm sorry,
Hmm.
Moses was a man of truth. Aaron was a man of peace. Some
Hmm.
people are so truthful, like that gruff guy you said, but he
Uh-huh.
was still straightforward with you. That was Moses. Abraham was a man of kindness. He was known for his chesed. Who are you within those two?
Within those, does it have to be limited within those two? I
Oh
mean,
no, go
I
where
find
go where.
myself, yeah, I find myself in so many of the different characters. I don't. I think that's one of the big lessons that I've learned on the journey is I'm not defined by one experience or one moment, and there are so many different facets to who I am that amalgamate to make me me. And that's to my broader point of kind of setting down you know, the previous belief system that um, all of these archetypal characters exist within me and you and everyone. And so I don't know between those two. Um, I I think that I'm abundantly kind, to a fault. So in that sense, probably Abraham. And on someone in my community said that my choice to not go through with the conversion was like Moses not getting to enter the land.
Oh,
That
interesting.
that I am, he was willing to give up the, actually it was that when God was going to wipe out the people, he said, you have to wipe me out. And so in some sense, Moshe rejected God, in that sense. Not that I'm rejecting God. Chas v'shalom, don't hear that. But the idea that I set that down to finish the journey with my kids, is,
Yeah, nice.
yeah, I would say that is where I see Moses in me.
There's a beautiful vort, as they say in Yiddish, the Var Torah, very short one, could be a midrash, that God came to Moshe Rabbeinu when not allowing him into Israel. And he said to him, he said, my son, don't worry, because I have something in the afterlife for you that's even far greater than the land of Israel.
Mm,
And I thought that is so beautiful.
yes,
It's just so
so beautiful.
beautiful. I've been playing around with AI a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and very often I'll ask AI to write a poem about my guests. So I
Ooh,
have today an ode to Caleb Schraeder,
amazing.
and here's how it goes. Hold on tightly, Caleb. In Kansas City, a heart began to seek through trauma's veil where silence would speak. A nurse by trade with hands that heal, but within his soul the wounds were very real.
Mm,
Through nights of care when life seemed thin, he found a longing that would never dim to study the Torah, to learn to grow, to seek the wisdom that helps us know. The path was winding, the choice unclear, to convert or not was his greatest fear. Yet in the stillness, a decision came to walk as a Noachite in God's great name. A father's love, a child's embrace, determining faith in God's own grace. For their young hearts, he would wait until they were ready to choose their fate. In
mm,
sacred spaces, he still does pray, not as a Jew, but in his own way. He observes, he learns with reverent mind, fully aware of the place he's assigned. Through Torah's light, his spirit was healed. In the structure of Judaism, his wounds were sealed.
mm,
For faith, for humanity, for God above, he found healing in the people that he loves. A journey of care, a journey of pain, a journey where wisdom and peace would reign. Caleb Schraeder, with his heart so wide, finds his place walking with faith as his guide.
amazing. That's
Isn't that lovely?
beautiful.
Isn't that lovely? I'll send it to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you so much for being my guest today, really sincerely. I was
Thank
thinking
you.
to myself, what sort of interviews do I really love doing? And tomorrow I'm going to be interviewing a guy whose father was a great rock and roller, and I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to it. But the thing that excites me the most in terms of my interviews is individuals who are on a course of meaning and purpose. I myself do my very best to try to grow, to try to change, to try to understand life and God and our purpose here. So that's part of my cerebral lexicon, if you will, very much so, and part of my soul. So when when we set up this interview, I was really, really excited to do it because of the journey that you're on, and I relate to it strongly. And you didn't fail me,
Thank you.
you
Thank
did
you.
not. Yeah, you were magnificent, really. I love
Thank
what you're
you.
doing. I love what you're doing. Any final words that you'd like to share with our listeners, those who are looking for meaning and purpose?
Um, Check on the caregivers in your life. Um, Oftentimes you don't know what they're carrying. You don't know how isolated they feel or how lonely their experience can be.
Great.
I
Ladies and
mean,
gentlemen, thank
that's
you so
that's
much.
the. Sorry.
No, no, no. Please, please go ahead.
I was. I kind of forgot what I was going to say. Just
That's a
that.
great message. So
Yeah. Um,
it's
if
true, eh?
if
You don't know what they're feeling, do you? You don't.
you don't, and what I was going to say is, if we don't take care of the caregivers, who's going to take care of you? Who's going to take care of us? Um, and nursing suicide is it is crisis level. It's huge. It's unbelievable, and nobody really knows what to do about it. So it really comes down to the individual level of caring for each other.
I want to add, by the way, we talked about it a little bit during the interview. Is that Caleb, together with his dear friend Julie Rife, have launched the podcast themselves, which is called Nursing You, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Nursing You. Just give us, in short, what is Nursing You all about?
Well, Julie and I are having the conversation about caregiving, and in that sense, we are caring for one another. So I'm nursing her, she's nursing me, and then that conversation is nursing you, and that extends to the broader community outside of healthcare, but really it's for healthcare workers that are suffering and have lost meaning and are really in a crisis and don't know what to do.
Excellent. If you simply do a Google search on Nursing You, the letter U, you will find it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everybody for watching and for listening. I'm hoping that you'll take something very important out of this interview. And in my mind, what it is, it's the idea that there is great potential in our lives for meaning and purpose. And while life can be a real struggle and you can be lonely and you can be lost, if you dig in and you reach out and you find the right books to read and the right people to speak with and a value system to embrace, and I know that's extremely vague, that the potential for meaning and purpose is there. And I think we can take that out of Caleb Schraeder. And I would ask you to listen very closely to his words, because I think there's an awful lot of wisdom there. Until we meet again, thank you so much for joining us. Sei gesund, as they say in Yiddish. Go in health. And I really, really look forward to being with you once again very, very soon. Thank you so much.